Charlie Scudamore is the Vice Principal at Geelong Grammar School and somehow wrangles teenagers day in, day out. And he's always to be listened to because I've only got 3. He deals with thousands every year. So, Charlie Scudamore. Mia Freedman, do you need an introduction? I think.
Yes.
So Mia Freedman has spent the day working in the library and barely taking a second out.
I did pop out to the shopping centre and I bought a top from H&M, so it hasn't been that bad of a day.
So Mia Freedman being not an enfant terrible at all, but being one of the youngest in her industry to achieve the things that she has, and I'm not going to say more because Mia can talk to that. Tara Pitt, as a mother of 3 small children, found herself on television in a reality TV show and came second in Survivor last year. And our local Annie Flamsteed, we've got to have a bit of local content. Annie has devised and inspires people, or devised a program, a gamified program called Inspire, working with young adolescents in mental health. So I'd like you all to just give them a welcome, please.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Emma. It was really kind. And before I say anything else and before we start, I just would like to acknowledge the original custodians of the land, to their elders past and present, to any other Indigenous people who are here today. It's wonderful to have you here. It's been a fantastic day for me. I arrived last night from Geelong. I am a teacher. You know, term has just started. What am I doing here? I feel so guilty. There's staff are back there and, I'll get back to school and straight away there's a kid, you get a phone call, eating disorder. Geelong Grammar School's wellbeing programs, positive education, we've been doing it for 10 years. Parents are here, parents are there. And I'm thinking to myself, get me to Toowoomba. It's fascinating. The world out there for adolescents is a very interesting one and it's a fascinating one. And I'm here because I love children. And I've had something to do with 3 of the McTaggart children.
And you're wagging school.
And I'm wagging school, and it's wonderful.
We support you in that.
Thank you.
Wholeheartedly.
So I got up early this morning in this beautiful place, and I've been here all day, and I've been listening to some fantastic stuff that's taken place. Ray Martin and the people that he was talking to about, mental health and keeping mentally fit for older people. There was another session that took place on, Indigenous health. And one of my portfolios is the Indigenous program that we have at Geelong Grammar School. And that was incredibly interesting. And then we had a very powerful session with Peter Fitzsimons, and he shared something on male depression and male, and that was incredibly intense and meaningful and so on. And we just finished listening to Chris and others about the whole concept of bullying in schools. So, that my background is in education. And so I asked myself this question as the MC. I thought I was going to be here talking about schools and everything else. And I've got these 3 phenomenal people who've achieved things maybe as a result of, you're a Glennie girl. I know the teachers at Glennie. I know that Yallery supported at Glennie. So there's Indigenous students which are related to the students that we have there. But, I think of the 3 of you, I've looked at your CVs, and I will say a little bit more about each of you. Because I found it fascinating. The fact, Mia, yourself, CEO of Mamma Mia Women's Network nationwide.
I'm not CEO.
That's what it said in the stuff I was looking at.
I know, my husband's CEO, so he'll get a bit pissed off if I claim that title. I'm Chief Creative Officer, which is a lot more fun,
That
frankly.
sounds better. It does sound better. And were you the youngest editor of Cosmo? Is that
I was,
right? 24, 23, a very young age?
What was I doing? I didn't know what I was doing. 24, yeah.
But then you've also written books. You've got this, the Work-Strife Balance, and it's a very revealing book about your, things, and it's specifically for women, etc., etc. 100 most influential women in Australia, according to the Financial Review. Brilliant. Mother of 3, and she just told us that the eldest is 21. We all 3 of us said no, not 21. Can't be that old. But what I love, there's a line, I don't know whether you said it or someone else said it, but the wheels of her bus fall off regularly.
Oh my God, every day.
So you're normal?
Yeah, oh my God, brilliant. So normal.
Okay.
Yes.
Annie.
Yep.
The youngest in the group. And she's a founder. Maybe if we go back a number of years, this is where Mia was, but she's right at the start of her career where she's start-up business, CEO, not CEO, but she set up Inspire Sports. And she set this up for young athletes And she's really wanting to help them achieve their goals, etc. She sent me a wonderful email explaining some of her background and how she's worked with young people as well, with herself at school, and how she's, managed her gymnastics. And interestingly, I'm going to get to this with all the panel, she spoke about stress and anxiety in an email that she sent me, and about how she uses these as positive emotions, rather than seeing them as negative. But through the work that I've done with well-being and so on, I'll be interested in having a discussion about stress, anxiety, and things along those lines. So it's wonderful to have you here as well. And finally, Tara Pitt. Tara and I met...
I don't think I should get a call now after these two.
Oh, no.
You're
Tara,
a
reality
survivor.
TV show.
You're a legend.
It's a fascinating story. And just meeting with you for the first time and listening for half an hour, there's some questions I'm going to ask you about the things that you spoke to me about in terms of motivation and what got you going and so on. So it's not just Survivor. And again, I didn't realise that last night was the conclusion. Was that right, last night you said?
The finale was last night for season 3.
You're a runner-up?
No. I was runner-up from last year.
So last
Shane
night...
Gould won. Oh, spoiler.
Oh, shh.
It's already been
It's already been aired. Yeah. Sometimes I do that.
But again, you're a mother of 3 young children, and also the work that's taken place beyond that, this Mates for Mates, which you'll say something about for veterans and so on, which is linked to sort of life with dad, etc., etc. And also we had a fantastic little conversation about equine therapy. We might find out a little bit about that. So we've got these people with us today. And I'm going to start the first question. I'm going to ask the panel themselves. What is it that motivates you? What is do you set yourself, is the motivation from within? Is it for yourself? Is it for others? Is it a combination of things? Mia, I'll start with you. What is it that has motivated you in your life?
Well, 2 things. I would say social justice has motivated me, feminism has motivated me, and when I put those 2 things together, I come up with the core purpose of Mamma Mia. We're a media company with a purpose, and that purpose is to make the world a better place for women and girls. And that is what gets me out of bed every day, and what has always got me out of bed, even before I had those words to put around it, when I was editing Cosmo, and I was so passionate about including women of all shapes, sizes and skin colours in Cosmo, because I felt that the way women were being portrayed by magazines was so terrible. And now at Mamma Mia, that's what gets me out of bed, whether I'm promoting women's business through Lady Startup. I'm all excited about meeting Annie, and I'm like, how can I help support her, and how can I get the word out about her? So I've now built this platform over a career that's been going for 27 years or so in the media, and I now can use that platform to pull other women up onto it. And that's what gets me up in the morning, to be honest.
That's very exciting. And Annie?
As
someone who's just starting up in this world?
Yeah, I think for me it's not so specific, but it's very much about the reason I started the business was because I got to a point after elite sport and after high school, and I realised that all of the things that I struggled with actually are very common in young people, and specifically in young athletes. So for me, I saw an opportunity where I can really relate to those young people, and I can really engage them in well-being and in improving their mental health. So for me, I guess what motivates me is the results that we're seeing, and how engaged these kids are in using our platform and using our mobile app to actually improve their mental health. I think it's really amazing that young people, we talk about mental health as being such an awful thing, but so many young people think they're struggling with it even when they're not. So helping them and giving them the tools to sort of work through it is really empowering. Like it's better than helping yourself feel better, is seeing yourself help other people feel better. So it's pretty special giving kids those tools.
Do you see your work as sort of preventative rather than
reactive? Absolutely. Yeah. So we try to work with, we just had our staff weekend on the weekend, and some of my team members are here, and we did a lot of work on what's our why are we in this business. And if you look at the market that we're in, it's a sports market, and it's so big. Like, you've got little tiny kids that are 3 years old, or my mum runs a gymnastics and it has 6 weeks old babies that do gymnastics, all the way through to professionals who are in their 30s, And we've chosen to work with the children and adolescent part of that, because I think that if we can educate them young, then we can prevent some of the issues happening later. And for me, that's really special, because I think of some of the things I struggle with later. If we can prevent them through education and through helping them to track their wellness, then that's pretty special.
Oh, thank you. Tara?
I still can't believe this kid's 23. You're amazing.
Thanks.
Don't ask what I was doing at 23.
What were you
Okay,
doing
I was
23?
having
No, come on,
children.
tell us. No. I'll change the
I was
question.
waiting for
Hold
it.
on, I'm interested. No. What was it that motivated you? What were in the first instance, motivated you even to apply for something like the Survivor, which seems to be a
what
significant
gets me out of bed every day is my kids and my husband. We're very close. I think just because we've always relied on just the 5 of us. So my 3 boys are 11, 9 and 5, all boys. And then my beautiful husband, Michael, who I've been with for 12 years. And then 2016, on the 1st of August, I got a phone call from my mum to say that my dad had committed suicide. And that really shook all of us, due to the fact that we were so close. So I get up every day knowing that I want to break this stigma, if you say, stigma of, I don't want my kids to think when you're down, you just go to that dark place. So I try every day to live, through my kids. And it's one of those things where what happened to me was terrible, and it was sad, and it destroyed my family. But, on the outcome, I went on this reality TV show to deal with my grief, and I found something so more than what money or fame can give me, which is that I can actually, no kids around, but kick ass. There was an Olympian water polo player that, she went home and the doctor went home and people were just going home, and I'm just like, this is fantastic, just little stay-at-home me from the Sunshine Coast, and I ride horses. But yeah, it's definitely my children, my family get me up.
Did you discover anything about, like some of the qualities or the inequalities that you had, the strengths that you had through that program?
I'm a little bit bitchy.
You found that?
I was watching myself going, oh, Tara, that's
I reckon
terrible.
you were just hangry.
I was so angry. I lost 11.5 kilos. I put that back on. But just that whole, I'm such a social person, so just chatting with people right now, and then they walk off going, let's get her out.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of plays with your mind a little, just a little. So I was saying to you, Charlie, my kids have always looked at my husband as this, such a cool dude, because I'm, have to brush your teeth before bed, have some fruit. Well, that flipped, because I became cool, I was on TV. And
Is that all it takes, going on Survivor?
just go on
I'm gonna go on
Survivor.
Why didn't I think of
just
that?
go on Survivor. You lose weight and you become cool. So, but yeah, definitely they get me up out of bed.
And then you discover things beyond Survivor.
That's right. Like, as much as every day, people deal with grief. Obviously, I'm not going to go and promote, go on a TV show to deal with grief. But the fact that I was stuck on that island by myself, I couldn't just ring my husband and say, these people are being really mean, babe. I had to just deal with them. Yeah. So I found that I've got a bit of a voice. Not afraid to use it, as you're probably all aware. But yeah, definitely just that whole feeling, even though I'm the only girl in the family, that the boys will hopefully now marry a strong woman. Yeah. They have a huge list for me to tick off, but good luck to whoever they bring home.
Yeah. Just going on to the email that you sent me, it was quite an extended one, and talking about yourself and so on. And part of that was really interesting for me, was this concept of how you utilise stress and anxiety. And we just had a very, very brief 2 minutes introducing ourselves to each other upstairs. And Mia was very interested in this difference between stress and anxiety. And we'll explain that in a second. But can you just elaborate a bit more on that, because I see stress and anxiety on a continuum. And it's a time thing. You can be stressed out forever, and that's not good. But having a little bit of stress, like I am now, with my butterflies going, I've been to the loo 4 times, and all that kind of thing. So can you just explain a little bit about that from your perspective?
Yeah, I think just before I do that, there is a clear distinction between stress and anxiety, and I think Mia will touch on that a little bit more. I think that one thing, we were just at Glennie this morning talking to 250 kids, year 10, 11, 12, and it was super confronting. But what we explained to them was, the stress that you feel for an exam, that's not necessarily anxiety. You've got an exam, so you're probably quite nervous. And we talk to athletes about that all the time. When you're doing a competition, you're not necessarily struggling with anxiety, but you've got competition nerves. So there is a difference. But what I meant in my email to you, what I wrote was, I sort of learnt when I finished sport and started uni and then started the business and went through all the fun parts of a startup, as I'm sure Mia can tell you about, but we're still very much in the fun, exciting part, I guess. I realised that I was always coming home or calling my friends or talking to mum and dad about, oh my God, I've got so much to do, I'm so stressed and I'm having all these anxiety attacks, and I was just seeing it as a really negative thing. And then I started to realise that actually the reason I was a good athlete, the reason I did well in school, and now the reason that I can get up at 4 a.m. if I need to get my work done, is because my mind is actually helping me to perform. And sometimes that can get confused as, oh my God, I'm so burnt out, I'm so anxious, it's so negative. But really, if I didn't have those 4 a.m. thoughts, and if I wasn't up all night thinking about the business and how we can change kids' lives, I probably wouldn't have started any of it at all. So it's sort of, I had a bit of a mindset change towards those feelings that I was having. So still very much there, and I'm not at all saying that all anxiety is positive, and there's definitely mental health that's very significant and very negative. But for me, it's sort of been something that my whole life I've struggled with it. Like in school, my reports would always say, oh, if she just would apply herself a little bit more to maths, and I was off thinking about sport or something else. So it was always, my mind's always been, thinking, struggling to be present, I guess. Yeah. And whilst that's not always a positive thing, it's actually allowed me to build this company, open a gym with my dad and do all of this stuff that people say, oh my God, what, how old are you? And that's probably...
That's in a good way, by the way.
Yeah. I think that's because of those sort of anxious thoughts and how my mind sort of takes me away. So I've had to learn to control it, obviously, because it can be negative, but being able to go, oh, that's just, that's a thought, and how can I use that to better my performance, or how can I use that to better my career? That's been a cool learning for me.
There's some interesting work on embracing as opposed to fighting some of these stressors. Mia, what's your take on this stress anxiety, which a lot of young people do experience? And at the moment, I've got these, I don't know how many, 240 Year 12 students, and they will all handle it differently. Every child is different, and that's the thing. So,
yeah, it's true. I think that. I respond well to stress in terms of I respond well to pressure, but anxiety for me is a whole other thing, and it's something that I was diagnosed with about 5 or 6 years ago when I had a sudden anxiety attack that lasted for 11 days. And I didn't tell anyone, no one knew. So I was just it was Christmas and we were up in Byron, and it was... in fact, the only thing that would alleviate the anxiety a little bit was if I was being quite active. So I was taking surf classes and I was going horse riding, and there are all these photos of me at that time, and you would never know. But inside, I became convinced I was dying. I had a type of health anxiety. And so I ended up being diagnosed with generalised anxiety disorder, which I realised I've had since I was a kid, not to that extent. It was clearly just getting much worse, but I've lived with that. It's kind of like toxic butterflies, or it's like a knot, a fist in your stomach. And there's no external reason for it. So, for example, I can go on Q&A, or I can get in front of people here today, not a problem. Nerves, not a problem. I actually don't even get nervous anymore when I do that. I get excited, but I'm not nervous. Anxiety is when, for me, my body is reacting as though I'm being chased by someone with a knife, but I might just be sitting in my car or sitting on the couch drinking a cup of tea. And for me, the reason that I needed to seek treatment for it, and I now have medication and I do certain things in my lifestyle like exercise and making sure I get a lot of sleep and having quite a strict routine, I need to do those things because I was not able to live my life productively with the level of anxiety that I had. And so, again, I didn't speak about it at the time because I didn't know anyone with anxiety. And just like anything that you go through, you probably thought you didn't know anyone who'd been touched by suicide. And then once people know that once you speak up and you articulate it, suddenly all these people come forward and say, yeah, me too, or whether it's an eating disorder, whatever it is, people go, me too, me too, me too. And that's the genesis of the Me Too movement, because I think particularly as women, we have this really prehistoric need to feel understood and seen and included. And something that I always think is that there's someone out there with a wound that's the exact same shape as your words. So by speaking about something that's been painful for you, or that the time that you felt very vulnerable, you are actually making someone feel more whole because they feel like they're less alone.
And at the same time, you talk about that, but you still lead a very busy life.
Oh yeah, I need to be busy.
So
in fact, one of the things I need to do for my anxiety, and this might seem counterintuitive, but I need to be busy. So I need to have a project. And it's a little bit like a working dog, a cattle dog. If they don't have something to do, they're going to, wee on the carpet and tear up the furniture. And that's what my brain does if it doesn't have something to do. It just turns on itself. So I've always got to make sure I've got projects going.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. Because we had this guy, there's a psychologist called Marty Seligman from America who's done all this positive psychology stuff. He came to our school. This is in 2008.
Amazing.
He is amazing. He lived
Talks
with us
about
for 6 months.
optimism a lot, right?
A lot of optimistic, learned optimism and authentic happiness. And what does it all mean? Authentic happiness doesn't come from the hedonic, going out and drinking and this and spending money. It comes from service to others and all these kind of things.
Well, it comes a little bit from shopping, I think.
A little bit. It's definitely, but it's not going to be sustained. But Marty came to our school and he kept, his mantra was less is more.
Oh,
He saw us as being incredibly busy. But we won't go into that. I want to listen to Tara's take on this, how she coped with stress. But one thing I will say today, when we were listening to Peter Fitzsimon's session on males, and the people that were talking, sleep and exercise were two of the most
non-negotiable.
In fact, what was his? I've forgotten the name of the person who said that 8 hours of sleep. Sleep is one of the number one issues confronting us today, and that includes obviously our youth. And at the moment at school, we've got this.
They're not sleeping enough.
They're not. Dr. Tony Fernando's at school, man who trains medicos, and I'll get onto this in a minute because I'm interested in this elite, high-performing people. But he said that for him, he trains doctors, medical doctors in New Zealand, and he believes that their sleep patterns are absolutely disrupted because of technology. There's no doubts in his mind that it's really causing problems for a lot of people. It's out, there's pros and cons and everything else, but this sleep and exercise thing is incredibly important. Stress, anxiety.
I don't exercise.
No. But the stress anxiety thing, I mean...
Do you get anxiety though?
I do get a little bit of anxiety, and I'm too medicated. Just after my second was born, he was 8 weeks preemie. Just didn't get that connection with him. When you first have a baby, you're breastfeeding or you're not, or he was sent away to the ICU for 7.5 weeks. So whenever they brought him into the room, it just felt like
someone else's
baby. So that was going on 10 years, and it was not until I walked out going, okay, maybe I'm allowed to say that was hard. As a mum, you don't want to walk around saying, oh, that was just easy, I just gave birth. No drugs, mind you. And then later on realise that this baby, you just don't have that connection, and you read books about this beautiful connection you have. I didn't have it. So yeah, I had to get help. I had to get medicated, because otherwise this relationship that I was having with my son was not going to turn out. It's funny, he's sort of like my favourite, but that's the difference. He's not really. But for me, it's definitely my horse. I know a lot of people are just like, it's just a four-legged animal, but the day where I've just come home and the kids have destroyed the house, I leave the house, I walk over to the stables, I saddle up my horse, I go for an hour, I come back calm, I can now tackle the children without just screaming at them for the next hour. I mean, I've taken my situation out of the house, they've probably destroyed it, which is fine, but I've gone for this ride on this horse, and then I come back and I can tackle it, right? Who, spat on who? Who destroyed what? Let's just get into it. Let's work on, let's move on.
It's like Survivor.
It really, every day is Survivor in my house, I tell you.
Right, that's interesting. Can I ask, again, this concept of helping elite athletes as such? Maybe it's because you're one. What is it about the elite athlete that motivates you to work with and try to support these? And why do they need support? I mean, they're great at what they do.
I think working with elite athletes has been something that sort of naturally evolved in our business, or pivoted, as they say. We sort of tried, when I started the business, it was about how can we help young women or young girls in school to understand their mental health issues and improve their well-being. So we initially started working on 4 basic things, so sleep, mood, energy and stress, with high school girls. And it sort of moved into, well, athletes are really engaging in this, probably because I was an athlete, I think. They'd look me up on social media or something and go, oh my God, she was an athlete. Now why? So that was it sort of just naturally happened. But now the reason we work with elite athletes is because we talk a lot, and I'm sure you guys have all heard about the stigma around mental health. And everyone's like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. And there's so many campaigns out there for, it's not weak to speak and all this incredible stuff. But there's never been anything specifically for athletes. And if you think of athletes, they're kind of like people on Survivor. Like, they're on TV all the time. They have to be seen as this successful, confident, outgoing, elite athlete. And when you're actually an athlete like that, or you're developing into an athlete like that, you're still going through high school, puberty, figuring out everything. You've got immense pressure on you to train, perform. If you're in a sport like gymnastics or diving, there's a lot of body image concerns, all of which, if you show to your coaches or selectors or the media or anybody, it's seen as weak. So when you talk about mental health in athletes, it's very, very rare to get athletes to speak up while they're actually training or when they're young. There's a lot of athletes now who are coming out and saying, oh yeah, when I was training, I went through X, Y, Z, and that's excellent. But I guess why it's important to work with developing athletes is because these issues, we know from what we've been doing with athletes, they're starting at 10 and 11 years old. These kids aren't sleeping well. They're worried about what they look like. They're worried that, they're not performing at school because of sport or at sport because of school, and they're trying to deal with this immense pressure. So I think it's really important to work with them, because we always say to athletes, it's okay to not be okay and be an athlete, because they think, oh, it's okay to not be okay, but I'm an athlete, so I have to be amazing. So I think that's why it's important, and we're really trying to educate athletes about, you're just a human. Like, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have good days. You may come across things like anxiety, depression. The sports scene is very challenging, particularly if they don't make it, if they sort of train their whole life and then don't quite make it. So
yeah, that is something. There was a brilliant Inside. I don't know how many people watch Inside with Jenny Brocky. And it was 2 shows that she had with elite athletes, Lauren Jackson, Liesl Jones. And you can think of the names I'm mentioning because they all ended up they reached the pinnacle, and yet they all suffered from some form of mental disorder as a result of reaching a goal, and then what?
And maybe
and this is something that is... Sorry,
I was just going to say they may have still dealt with or gone through mental health issues if they didn't do sport.
True.
And this is, I guess, what we're trying to, when we write content or when we work with the sports psychologists and dietitians and stuff, when we're writing this content, we start with they're just teenagers or they're just adults or however old they are, and then we add in the normal pressures they've got, then we add in the pressures they've got as athletes, and all of a sudden it's kind of like a perfect storm, because they've got it's as a young developing or an elite athlete, you're sort of forced to live almost the life of like a very successful business person. Like, you've got to be up at early, you've got to eat well, you've got to sleep well, you've got to answer to someone, you've got to be on show all the time, you've got to be confident all the time. So it's very similar to when you're dealing with high performing people in the workplace. It's exactly the same, but with 13-year-old athletes. So
I'll go back to this Dr. Fernando guy that's at school at the moment, because he deals with compassion. His way of dealing with, and again, what he looks at and sees in the elite, maybe in your world as well, where you're employing people, you're finding the best, reporters and so on. He thinks there's a real issue with perfectionism. And then again, we talk about this concept of failure. And again, there's a mantra now that, you've got to learn to fail. You can only learn through failure and so on. But failing is quite hard for young people and so on. Mia, do you come across this in your world, where you come across people that aim for perfectionism, which stifles perhaps their creativity, innovation, whatever? Is there something you've come across in your field?
I think it's the result of helicopter parenting. And I'm in an interesting situation because I was about to say I own a millennial. I have him. He's not even a millennial, he's a Gen Z. but I have worked with millennials for the last sort of 25 years and Gen Zs as well. And I've learnt a lot. And one of the things that I've learnt the most is that this is a generation who expect to come first all the time. And it's because as parents, we've been so worried about them experiencing any kind of disappointment or frustration. Participation awards. Everybody gets a ribbon. So my youngest son, who's 10, was at the athletics carnival when he was little a couple of years ago, and they had this thing where you have to bring a big safety pin. And it's because the kids by the end of the day are bloody weighted down by 50 ribbons that they got for just pretty much breathing. And, you know, everyone's very worried if their child doesn't get a prize and a ribbon and a thing and a blah, and there's not just first, second or third, but there's also just you get a ribbon just for turning up. And that's a terrible thing. Because guess what? When you go to work, you don't get a ribbon. I have conversations with the millennials all the time where they're like, but I just don't feel appreciated enough. And you're like, that's what the money is for. You know, the money that goes in your bank account every week, that's thank you for doing your job. But they want a ticker tape parade. And I think it's our fault. As, you know, I know that I do it myself. It's like parenting is now a verb, and it wasn't when I was growing up. And, you know, I find myself, particularly when my kids were little, going, good listening, that's great waiting, good pronunciation, great sharing. Like, everything is a prize and a validation and well done and congratulations. And so when they get into the world, that's what they expect from their employer, from their partner. And when that doesn't happen, they're like, what do you mean? And so we've got a generation of kids who are not used to these feelings of discomfort. And when they feel them, whether they're sadness, whether they're boredom, whether they're frustration or disappointment, whether they're anger, they don't know how to process them. So they cut them off. What do they cut them off with? Gaming, food, alcohol, drugs, screens, whatever it happens to be, because they don't know how to process feelings.
You're nodding your head. You agree with that?
Yeah, my oldest Jack, it was just on Monday, brought up the bin and we got a long driveway. We were on some acreage up at the Sunshine Coast. And he goes, hey, Mum, I just brought the bin in.
Yeah.
It was like that movie, The Castle, where he dug a hole. I just didn't know what to say.
Yeah, well done. What do I get for this?
So I just said, all right, well, good. And he's like, well, you know, do I get some pocket money? For starters, I've never started pocket money, so I don't even know where that came from. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's just every day.
It's a sense of entitlement to praise, entitlement to participation awards, to entitlement to promotions or fancier job titles. And it's really interesting, and I'm not down on millennials, and I think that I think they're incredible, and I think that it's our fault. I think that it's the way we've been parenting as a culture, and I'm interested to know what you think about that, so fixated on self-esteem, and my God, best they not have bad self-esteem, that we've not equipped them to live in the real world.
But I think it's also, I agree with you, but I think parents, it's a tough one for parents. I think it's also reinforced by the values the society has.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm not going to have but even reality TV is very much about award.
Yeah, but I didn't get anything,
by the way.
This is a really good example.
Yeah.
I can show you my bank account. Yeah. Second place gets nothing.
Let's not get carried away with this now. Hold on a minute. We've only got 25 minutes.
No, I'm fine. I've seen a few shrinks. I'm fine.
Good.
But it is a good example because I came home and my kids when I was announced, I remember I walked out to the crowd and my boy's like, what'd you get? Yeah. I said, well, see Jericho? Yeah, he won. Mummy got nothing. Yeah. And they're like...
That's a good lesson for them.
Yeah, but and that's why I was like, I know I'm saying a bit about survive because that's all I've got. But, runner-up really got nothing.
Do you know what's really interesting about hearing all of this is that I have had to sort of deal with the other side of it. So trying to build a business and trying to, I guess, go to uni, and you leave school as a Gen Z millennial.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure what I am.
I think you're a millennial.
I don't even know what I am.
I don't know what I am.
We're a confused generation.
Yeah.
But you leave school and you're like, I have to go to uni, I have to get a degree to run a company and make billions of dollars straight away. And
that's pressure, man.
You're sort of like, oh my God. And it's no wonder our generation, or my friends, and it was so common. And these athletes that we're working with now who are even 5 or 10 years younger than me, it's even worse with them. They're like, I have to go to the Olympics. I have to make the national squad.
God.
Like it's just this pressure is building and building. And I don't think my parents are here, so I had great.
We love you, Mum. We love you, Dad.
Very, very supportive parents, and it was never sort of like we wore shoes, but I mean, like we hung out outside just like doing whatever we wanted. We had a very awesome childhood, I guess is what I'm
Free
trying to say.
range.
Yeah, it was awesome. And then we were very well supported to do sport. Like, having parents that allow you to train 30-something hours a week and do school is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what the main contributing factor, and I keep going back to talking at Glennie today, but it was incredible talking to these kids. I felt like I can relate to them, but at the same time I could really not, because it's just getting more and more pressure from sources that no one can control, like social media. And half of them, at the end I was saying goodbye to them, like, oh yeah, I already follow you on Instagram. And I was like, oh, okay. Like it's just this world of external pressure. And then you add OPs or HSC or like scores at school, then uni, then trying to get a job, and then trying to have the perfect boyfriend, and then trying to have the perfect clothes. You add all of that on top of what's already happening within themselves, then social media, then the actual, it is getting harder to get jobs and get into uni and everything, and it's really interesting. And what I'm noticing is that I've sort of come through it a bit, and I'm like, things take time. My parents always say, Annie, you just have to calm down a bit and slow down.
But Mia, that's where I come back to this values thing. What are we asking our students to value, or our children to value in life? What is it? They are, from my perspective, you used the word narcissistic. There is I think you did use the word narcissism, our young people. And individuality.
Well done, you.
I think you did. But I see this as something which has been encouraged. It's the I world, the iPhone. It's, looking at your image and saying, well, my body image needs to change because it doesn't quite fit a norm.
Well, no, it's
all about the
performative.
self.
Social media has made us performative. We perform friendship, we perform our careers, we perform our bodies, we perform exercise. Like now, somewhere along the way, exercise became about taking a selfie looking hot in your activewear, and I don't know where that happened, so I insist on posting photos of me looking really sweaty and ugly at the end of an exercise, end of a run, going, I exercise for my head, not for the selfie, and it's really important to remember that. So I think that as women particularly, and as girls, the biggest mistake we make is comparing our real lives to other women's highlight reels. And that is what we see on social media. And I think increasingly boys are doing that as well. And, welcome to equality, gentlemen. Now you've got boys with increasing rates of eating disorders. Suicide is a horrendous issue. Body image problems for boys as well.
But not only little kids, sorry Mia, I'm 34. That's right, I'm 34, and last year I got the most bizarrest comment on my Facebook. Mind you, Channel 10 made my Instagram page. I never had an Instagram account. And this person, I don't know their name, they said that Tara should not be standing next to Annalise or Sarah. Now Annalise is 20-something and Sarah is a model because it makes her look shorter and fatter. And I looked at it, and of course my mum, Cheryl, she's like, let's find their house, And I'm just like, Cheryl, calm your farm.
Go Cheryl, I need Cheryl in my life.
No, you don't. There's a lot of Cheryl.
She sounds
Hurricane Cheryl. But I said to her, for that person to say that, there's something going on, because before Survivor, and anyone that knows me beforehand, I look good. I know I do. I step out some days and I go, phew, Tara, well
got
done.
It going on.
So for that person, I looked at it and I thought, oh, that's sad. So I never got sad.
Yeah.
I got sad for that person. And then Annalise got on there and said, don't upset my friend. It's like, girl, I don't need you to, I'm all right. I've got it going on. My husband thinks I'm good. I've got. You
know what's awesome to hear? That I never hear our generation say things like that. And I think that's the problem.
It's true.
Like, people our age would look at that comment and just go, why? Why did they say that? Who are they friends with? Like, are they talking about me? And then it sort of starts this cycle. Like, and it's even, I don't know, I know I'm not like that old, but compared to the thoughts I was having 3 years ago, they're completely different. Like, when I was in high school, you just read into every comment, every side look, even from people who you don't really care about. Like, someone will make a comment and you'll be like, and it's all you think about for like 24 hours. And I don't know, it's scary. It's really refreshing to hear that, because it's like,
That
well,
I'm up
maybe-
myself and I love myself. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
As an
gift.
Maybe if
Hell
we
yeah.
As an
Bottle
educator,
that.
yeah.
as an educator, the
I'll
stats,
buy
you're saying
some.
it's scary out there, but they say, we hear that, 1 in 4 adolescents have got a mental or emotional disorder. Of those 25%, 75% will not seek help. We hear now that, last year in Australia, what happened? Our suicide rates went down. They went up 9% last year. So I asked this question. I'm dealing with young people all the time. Talk about parents, and there's different forms of parenting, etc. What roles does school play in this? Should we be sacrificing academic time in order to talk about flourishing, well-being, etc.? Because not a lot of schools do it, but should we?
I don't know. I think that people always say the answer is, they should do it in schools. They should do it in schools. Poor bloody teachers.
True.
You can't do
But they
everything.
are there for 8 hours of the day.
Yeah, I know, but also they're at home for more hours of the day than
I
that.
know.
And I know that some of them are sleeping, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I think as parents, we can't just offload everything onto the school. And I think that one of the things that really disturbs me and troubles me is the intrusion of parents into schools. And it used to be, if I got in trouble at school, that was between me and the school. Now you've got schools who have lawyers on staff because so many parents are wanting to sue because their kid got the wrong mark on a test, or they were asked to cut their hair when they didn't think that they should have to. And I mean, you've got increasing numbers of teachers being harassed by parents on behalf of their kids. It's just like, back off. Yeah. Let them just go to school and have their school life and learn things at school.
Well, my oldest doesn't enjoy sport. Not that he doesn't enjoy it, his thing is coding. Does anyone know?
Yeah.
We're all into coding now. I love it. But I have no
Does he want a
idea.
job?
Yeah, can I just say proud parent moment? My oldest Jet yesterday just won the Premier's Queensland coding competition for grade 6 in the Queensland schools.
That's well done.
I can't even say it might have something to do with me because I have no idea what it is. But
is there a competition to win now hours playing Fortnite? Because I think my 10-year-old
yeah, I think
would
I
win
could.
that.
Yeah, we could. But the thing is, my school, Yamundi School, just up on the sunny coast, if they actually say if you don't want to do any sport, we'll put you in this classroom and we're going to do some yoga. We've got some, so because Jet just doesn't, he tried soccer, he tried football, and I think it just goes back to me, I don't play sport. So this next subject, is making him feel, I'm going to sit out of all the sport events and everyone else is going to go and play sport and I have to sit at the end, on the sideline. They've put in this other subject, which I just love it, and it's talking about his feelings. He comes home and talks to me about the way he felt today. And so for me to have 3 boys as well, like, a lot of people say, oh, you're so lucky to have sons. I don't understand that, but mainly because boys can also shut down, so, he's got this beautiful birthmark that he was obviously born with, and it wasn't until in grade 2 when they had their first, sports carnival that he came home and said, oh, this kid said, I've got dog shit on my chest. Aww. My first instinct was, where's the kid, That was a bit of Cheryl came in.
Cheryl will sort that out.
I did. A little bit of my mum came in, but then I took a step back and said, but remember, that's your special mark. No one else has that mark. And he now walks around with no shirt. He's proud.
You're a good mum.
I try, man. Try so hard. But, it just goes back to that.
I just realised we haven't got very much time left.
Let's do another hour.
There's lots of other questions I'd like to ask. And just to go back on it, we have taken out maths, science and English and actually put in its place some classes on resiliency and flourishing, and a whole range of things from ELC through to, not ELC through, but we have done that because we think placing well-being at the heart of education is going to help every aspect of it. You want great results, get kids in a better frame of mind. You can't keep forcing more and more and more. This is where less is more. You want kids to do well academically, don't give them more maths. Give them other things like yoga and meditation, and they are really, really important things for young people to do. It's got to happen somewhere, we think, and we think it should start in schools. And so that's, and amazingly, the most powerful work that I've been involved in the last 8 years has been working with independent state, Catholic, Jewish, Islamic schools with Chris here, the parents. It has been an amazing coming together, and the politics has gone out of the window. So really, Geelong Grammar School walks into a school to do some training. It's a bit like this, oh God, you know, the toffs are here. And within a couple of days, that's just broken down because we're talking about the love of children and what we can do to make their lives better. I want to open this to the floor. There must be 100 questions. You've got these 3 people to ask. And we'll wait for a microphone because it is being recorded. But her hand went straight up. That's brilliant.
Hello? Annie,
Yes.
at Glennie today, what was the thing that you said to the girls that you left them with that empowered them and you?
Oh God, were you there?
No.
Okay, so it's not
Actually,
a
I
trick.
was in the junior school with
Okay.
It was on Instagram, Minnie. It's already hit.
Oh gosh. Whoa, I said a lot of things. We spoke a lot about, I don't know. I mean, the last thing they said to them was that they should just go for it. Like we spoke a lot about, we actually went through everything we spoke about today. So like social media and the pressure there and everything like that. But I think we got an email today from about 15 minutes after I left to the info@Inspire email address. And it was this kid, and she obviously was emailing in class, which I don't know if I agree with.
Good sign.
It's a principal.
Bad teacher, but a good sign. Keep going.
It was like two iPhone pages long. And so she'd kind of just gone like, oh my gosh. And I didn't speak to her. A lot of kids put their hands up and interacted, and she didn't interact at all. But she said that the most empowering thing, or the thing that she liked the most, was that we were talking a lot about them. Not about like, oh, you need to listen more to your parents or your teachers, or you need to read this book, or you need to learn this, or you need to learn that. She said like it was really empowering to get skills that she can actually adapt herself. So she said, I could just really relate to when you said that you'd had anxiety, or when you said this, or when you said that. And it was so nice to read, because when we plan for content, or when we plan for this is what we're going to do this year and this is how many kids we're going to try and affect, we always talk about, and you might not agree with me on this, but the teachers already know it all. And the reason that kids are struggling is because they don't feel like they can actually relate to either their teachers or their parents or the other people around them or the other mental health charities that are out there, because they're like, they don't get it, like they don't understand what I'm going through. So for this kid to say, oh, Annie, I really feel like you got it, and she listened to everything I said. It was probably what you guys would say. It's probably what their teachers have been saying for ages. So I'm not really sure what the most powerful thing was. Do you know what it was? That was it? Okay, good.
Good girl.
Good. I wasn't
Thank
sure,
you.
but it was just, it was pretty special too. And that's what I wanted to say before. I know that we're running out of time, but when you said...
No, keep going. I've left some time for questions. That's fine. You
when
finish.
you said, do schools need to do more, or do we need to put more in the curriculum? And I think yes, but I also think that like you can give kids as much information as you possibly want, but unless you're actually truly educating them and giving them a why to actually make a change, or a why to engage in positive behaviour, whether that's exercise or nutrition or meditation or whatever it may be, they have to have an intrinsic motivator. And what we've found through a lot of the stuff we've done with Inspire is if we say, oh, this is Dr. So-and-so, they're a clinical psychologist, they don't listen. But if it's Annie, or if it's Frankie, or if it's one of our young people and, you know, they're 18 or they're 20 years old, these kids just listen. They just engage with it straight away. And that's how I think that social media can actually be really powerful. So it's about finding a balance between the highlight reel and what's actually real. But we do know that kids engage with their own generation. So if we can empower them to not fix the problems, but I guess prevent things within themselves, I think that's just as good as a school, you know, hiring a psychologist to prevent things.
No, I think it's a very good point you raise. I think some of the greatest learning can take place amongst the students themselves and so on. I think it's an interesting thing you say, because I think, you know, when you're talking about this wellbeing stuff, again, the schools that we're working with, everyone learns the stuff. That includes the cleaners, the staff, because we're all in it together. And unless you role model this behaviour to students, unless you can go in and talk about gratitude in a lesson, and then you get outside of that lesson, you're not showing gratitude, forget it. You've got to live it. You've got to, exactly.
Yeah.
So, any other questions? There must be a number. Yeah, over here. Thank you.
Do you think that a lack of time or energy to spend with kids has an influence on them looking for affirmation and acceptance in the wider social community?
I think that, the research has shown that women, particularly the biggest thing that's changed in a couple of generations is that more and more women are working outside the home. And in actual fact, we are spending more time with our kids, not less. And that doesn't surprise me because I genuinely enjoy hanging out with my kids, but my parents never really hung out with me. That was not something that you did as a kid. You didn't hang out with your parents. But my kids, what they want to do is hang out with me. And I really, now that they're a little bit older and more reasonable, I like to hang out with them too. Something that I think is probably common in a lot of houses is kids nagging their parents and parents nagging their kids to put phones down. And I think there's often this emphasis on we need to be having quality time. And sometimes that can be a pressure because sometimes you just need quantity time. Sometimes you just need to be hanging out and not be like, tell me how you're feeling right now. So I think that there's a lot to be said for quantity time, but there's also a lot to be said for kids not having your full attention all the time. And it's back to what I was saying about kids learning that their wants don't necessarily always come above their parents' needs. And I think that's something that we've forgotten. And I think particularly as mothers, we're sort of conditioned to feel that we've always got to put our kids' wants first. And sometimes you just can't. And as an employer of a lot of young people, I would say every time you don't put your children's needs first, I don't mean their urgent needs, like if they're bleeding, but you're actually doing a favour to their future employer because you're teaching them how to be patient and how not to always be the centre of the universe.
I agree, but I also sort of agree to disagree with the quality time. I think that a lot of I find it with sometimes with my friends, we'll go out for dinner and we'll all be Instagramming this awesome restaurant that we're at and tagging people and whatnot. That you almost spend an hour of that time not actually talking.
No, I agree with that.
And so then you're kind of like, well, my friends didn't even ask me about my job. Well, maybe they would have if you put your phone down. And there's this, so I think that it's maybe not so much about having more time. I don't have children. I actually have no idea what it's like to have children.
It's great.
I am
You've got a business, you've got a bit of an idea. No, you know what, I think you're absolutely right, and I don't mean to advocate for people looking at their phones all the time, but I think it's interesting when my eldest son finished school, I made sure that I cut back on a whole lot of, I didn't do travel and I put off writing a book that year because I just wanted to be around. Now, sometimes I have in my head, well, spend some great quality time. Kids don't often, sometimes, if it doesn't suit them, they don't want to spend quality time with you. But for him in that last year, he just wanted me around. Yeah. And that was incredibly helpful.
And I think it's just about like the time you have with, not even your kids, but even with your friends. And like you guys were saying before, that you seek, compliments from your partners or your friends or Instagram or your parents or whoever. I think it really does come down to when you're actually with them. It may be that you're both on computers, that's fine. But it's more about that when you're actually with them, what kind of culture are you building? Is it, I'm too busy to talk to you right now? Of course that kid's going to want, Mum, I need your attention. And it's what Chloe that's here, she has a daughter and she works with me on Inspire, and I don't know how she's nailed it, but she just has. So maybe afterwards you guys could talk to her because some days she brings Rosie to work when it's not an actual work day. Thank you, Chloe. But she's just got this awesome balance of, and Rosie is only 14 months or something, but she's already starting to learn that like Mum has to work, but Mum's also my mum. And it's really empowering to see that because I don't have children yet, so it's nice to see that there is a way you can build that without one or the other. Like you can do both, I think, simultaneously.
It's like a lot of what we've been discussing today: stress, anxiety, time spent with family, commitment. It's the Goldilocks thing,
and
not too much, not too little, and it's finding that, the balance, I think, and finding that balance is probably one of the most complex things of all.
And
Sorry, Tony.
you're right. I was just going to say again, Survivor, but since I've been on the show, we watched the season this year as a family, so it's on a pretty good prime time. And it's just funny when your 5-year-old, they're all sitting there at the tribal council trying to, vote out who's going home, and Nash sits up and goes, I wouldn't have done that move. You know, like, but that's us 5 sitting down. I know we're
Yeah.
sitting in front of a TV.
Oh, but you're engaging
But
with
we're
something,
actually
yeah.
communicating and we're talking about
Yeah.
how to get people out of a game. But
See, that's so different to all sitting on the couch
Yeah.
with the TV on 5 different
Yeah.
devices,
Very
pretending
true.
you're engaging,
Very
but you're
true.
not.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Even that concept of delayed gratification, you know, this binge viewing, it was great. You know, I used to look forward to Tuesday on, you know, because Dallas was on. And
Who?
my 7th Dallas, that's how old I am. Hold on.
Dallas, wow.
I saw a few people smiling yesterday. Anyway, another question, yes, because I was going to say, but we waited for that moment. But now it's a case of I want it and I want it now. And I think that's something to be said as well about bringing people together. Sorry, question here.
I just wanted to share probably the greatest advice I was given as when I was pregnant by a midwife in Zimbabwe. And I will always thank her. I'm not saying I live up 100% to that advice every day, but she said, the greatest gift as a mother that you can give your child is to love the child's father. And if you're the father of that child, the greatest gift you can give to that child is to love its mother. And she said, if you provide the right home environment, that kid will flourish. That's all.
Thank you. That's lovely.
Not going to disagree with that. Just one last question at the back there. Thank you.
Sorry, excuse me.
This has been fabulous. I often get on my soapbox about education. My parents have been international school teachers for 20 years and I still feel, and I want you to either disagree or agree with me, that we still box children in school in Australia and we're still not learning from other countries that have gone way beyond. And my son likes to dance, he's a ballet dancer. If he could learn through dance as opposed to having to go into a classroom and, you know, do an exam, which some of us, me, freak out about, do you think we'd have a better, well-balanced group of children if we were allowed to? Never get nervous. I don't know why I'm nervous. It's because it's because
Better be because
I've never met anybody from. I'm usually on the stage, but do you? I just think education. We are so archaic. We haven't moved at all in 1,000 years when it comes to how we educate our children in Australia. Is my point.
Charlie.
It's one for
Is
you,
that for me?
Charlie.
That's you, Charlie.
I think the comment is extreme in the sense that we haven't moved. I think there are schools that are trying to say that, you know, this VCE, IB, ATAR score is not the be-all and end-all. I still think there's far too many schools that are focused on the result, NAPLAN, etc., etc., which, again, if that is the only focus, it's a small part of the bigger wheel in education. I think what we have got to do is to make sure that whatever school our kids go to, the intrinsic motivation, and you use that word intrinsic, is there for them, and we provide opportunities for them to find a passion. If your son loves ballet, let's give them the opportunity to explore that. There's nothing wrong with an exam. There's nothing wrong with a bit of pressure. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's all it is, there's a lot wrong. But if it's only part of, it's like, what's the best form of teaching? There isn't one form. I've been to Finland. I went to Finland to talk to them about well-being. Did you know in Finland they have the highest rates of suicide in Europe? Did you know that their adolescents have the highest rates of depression? We simply don't hear about this. So they're doing lots of work on well-being. So I agree, I tend to agree. I think we have a 19th century industrial model of education, which has not moved with the times, and the time has come for us to put at the forefront of education the well-being of adolescents, critical creative thinking, plus other things which are going to help them cope with the very, very rapidly changing world they're going into. But I think there's been a lot of good stuff happening, not fast enough, and I'm afraid to say I don't think we are properly supported. I think the last person who really, maybe even then, I was going to say Julia Gillard, when she was in charge of the education department, had some great ideas, and then she became the Prime Minister. And she lost that portfolio. I respect these people, but I just don't think they know enough about education to be dictating to us what we should be doing.
Charlie,
It's a complex question.
I think that, I agree, but I also think that young people do really well with a little bit of structure. And I think that,
Totally.
life has structure. Like you were saying, when you get a job, you have to do your job. You can't be like, oh, but I prefer to not do my job, because they'll be like, well, you don't have a job. I think that there should be a balance, and I completely agree with what you're saying. Like like I said before, like school and uni has always been, I always prefer to do sport, or I always prefer to run a business. Like I've always been a little bit like that, but I still did school, I still did the exams, and what it did was it built resilience. I think that if we can sort of do both, and I'm not in the education sector.
I agree with you, yeah.
But my sister is a teacher in the IB curriculum, and they do a really cool job of, I guess, doing a bit of both, and sort of saying to kids like, yeah, that's okay, you can do that, but you still have to go to school, and you still have to do exams, and you still have to learn those things. And it's kind of setting them up for the real world, I think, a little bit, because otherwise we just have a whole world full of people that are like, I want to do whatever I want and it's okay. Like, where does it stop? So I think there needs to be probably more open-mindedness, but still keep that, like you said, there's nothing wrong with exams, something wrong with that's all you do, but I also think there's something wrong if it's just free range. It's not teaching them any boundaries, it's not teaching them any skills or resilience.
And if the future is who you are, and people and generations coming through like you, I think the world is going to be a far better place. So
I did year 12 just for the formal. So
on that note, I'll say thank you very much to Annie, Tara and to Mia. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause, everyone.